Well, it's also we've lost our capacity. Not we've lost it, but we've disengaged from our capacity to speak on those terms. We are taught to think rather than to feel. We've had the last 2,000 years of more patriarchal systems where we've been more taught to be in our minds than to be in our bodies. And over the years and the centuries, the healers or the witches or many of the people that were bringing the awareness to the embodiment, to the feeling, to that aspect of the unseen, were either demoted or prosecuted or burned. So that we're coming at a time when we are integrating these paths that have been long forgotten and actually realizing how do we come back into the awareness of that subtle body. You've got some amazing teachers that are coming through at the moment in the world. Bessel van der Kolk is coming through, and Gabor Mate is one of the world leaders in terms of trauma, and the likes of Peter Levine, who's all written some amazing books about the somatic nature of our embodiment and how trauma is often held in that. Because if you look at, even as adults, we come into our mind about our communication, but we don't know, we're still learning, how do we engage in this feeling body? And that's often the problem, because from childhood, you look at how does trauma develop? A child, when they experience an emotion of anger or sadness, say a little kid has experienced, somebody took a toy from them. The kid gets angry and gets into a response of overwhelmed by an emotion. Now, that kid may go away and go into a corner somewhere and just sit and rebel into that emotion. And that becomes internalized for that child. Now, if a child has surroundings around him that allow him to experience that emotion and to speak about it and to integrate it, then that child will allow that emotion to thaw out. Whereas if it's not allowed to thaw and to be processed, then that becomes internalized. Mm-hmm. And that internalization causes a disconnect for that child. And that disconnect from that child causes them to start to create patterns of not feeling safe to be themselves in their minds. And that space of going into the mind, then you start seeing the pattern each time they experience the same experience of anger, for example. Then they'll go into their mind and construct around their mind to try to find ways to feel safe, but not inherently actually drop into their body to help them to process that emotion. So we develop this as adults, that we find our safety becomes in our mind rather than in our body, to actually find the processing. To really come back into our body, we have to process that emotion, not only from the adult point of view, but all the way through that ripple of that emotion, all the way to the pebble from where it started.